Silent streets echo where laughter once filled the air. We are uncovering the secrets of 20 forgotten civilizations that vanished without a trace. By the end of this journey, you will understand the fragile threads that hold even the most powerful societies together. We will explore why a city of advanced engineers could be empty in a single generation, and what cryptic artifacts left in the desert can tell us about our own future. What do you believe is the greatest lesson a lost world can teach us today? That silence in the city square holds a question for the ages. Why would a people who built monuments to last for millennia, who developed writing and law and art, simply walk away from it all, leaving only echoes for us to find? The fall of a civilization is rarely a single event, but a slow unraveling of threads that once held a society tight. Historians like Jared Diamond point to recurring patterns that make even the most powerful cultures vulnerable. A changing climate could slowly choke off the food supply. Precious resources like timber or fresh water might be exhausted by generations of success. Sometimes internal strife and conflict fracture a society from within, while in other cases, new ideas or outside groups present an insurmountable challenge. The truth is, these forces often intertwine, a cascade of misfortunes that overwhelms a society's ability to adapt. It makes you wonder, looking at our own interconnected world, what threads are we relying on today? Are we managing our resources with the future in mind, or are we repeating the same ancient patterns? The lessons from these empty cities are not just about the past, they are urgent conversations about our own resilience. And so, with that question hanging in the air, we turn to our first forgotten world, a place where sophistication met a sudden, mysterious end. A metropolis of 100,000 people, with the world's first known urban sanitation systems, simply fell silent. The Indus Valley Civilization, flourishing for centuries across what is now India and Pakistan, represents one of history's most profound enigmas. Its cities, like the immense Mohenjo-Daro, were marvels of early planning, laid out in precise grids with baked brick houses and sophisticated drainage that channeled waste away from homes. They used standardized weights and measures for trade across a vast region, evidence of a complex and interconnected economy. Yet they left behind no grand palaces, no monumental tombs of kings, and a written script that, despite countless attempts, remains stubbornly undeciphered. Their voices are lost to us, their history told only through the objects they left behind. Intricately carved seals depict animals and perhaps deities, while delicate pottery and carefully crafted beads speak to a rich cultural life. The centerpiece of Mohenjo-Daro, the Great Bath, is a watertight pool that may have been used for important ceremonial gatherings, hinting at a society deeply concerned with ritual and community. Then, around 1900 BC, the lights began to go out. The cities were not destroyed in a violent conquest, at least not initially. Instead, the archaeological record suggests a gradual abandonment. People simply stopped maintaining the sophisticated infrastructure, and over time, the streets emptied. So what could cause such a meticulously ordered society to simply walk away from their achievements? Many researchers point to a profound shift in the environment. The lifeblood of this civilization was a river, known today as the Gaga Hakra, which once flowed reliably through the heart of their lands. Climate studies suggest that ancient monsoon patterns shifted, slowly starving the river and turning fertile farmlands into dust. A society built on agricultural surplus cannot survive when its breadbasket fails. Other theories propose that this environmental stress may have triggered internal conflict, fracturing the social order that held the cities together. Or perhaps trade routes collapsed, disrupting the economic networks that fueled their prosperity. The truth is likely a combination of these factors, a slow-motion unraveling where a changing world presented challenges that even this advanced culture could not overcome. It is a haunting legacy, a reminder that the most enduring structures are not always made of brick and mortar, but of the fragile human systems that sustain them. And from the silent, ordered streets of the Indus, our search for answers carries us to another continent, to a people who carved an entire empire from the unforgiving mountains of South America. High on a cliff overlooking the Azure Sea, a palace of vivid colors and labyrinthine corridors pulsed with life. This was the heart of the Minoan world, a civilization that flourished on the island of Crete while others in Europe were still in their infancy. The Minoans were not just advanced, they were dazzlingly so. Their artists covered palace walls with breathtaking frescoes of leaping dolphins and acrobats vaulting over the backs of powerful bulls, scenes of grace and motion frozen in time. As master seafarers, their ships crisscrossed the Mediterranean, establishing trade networks that brought in precious metals, ivory, and ideas, creating a culture of remarkable sophistication and wealth. They developed their own writing system, which we call Linear a script that to this day whispers its secrets just beyond our understanding. Then, in an instant, their world was shattered. The colossal volcano on the nearby island of Thera, modern Santorini, erupted with a force that is almost incomprehensible. This was not a simple volcanic event. It was one of the most powerful explosions in human history. The eruption sent towering tsunamis crashing into the northern coasts of Crete, devastating the Minoan fleet and coastal settlements. The sky would have darkened for weeks as a thick blanket of volcanic ash settled over the island, smothering farmland and crippling agriculture. While the Minoan culture did not disappear overnight, this natural cataclysm delivered a blow from which it could never fully recover. Their power and influence waned, leaving them vulnerable. Within generations, their palaces showed signs of being taken over by the Mycenaeans from the Greek mainland, a culture with a very different, more warlike character. The vibrant, athletic Minoan spirit was gradually absorbed and faded into the stuff of legend, eventually giving rise to the myth of the Minotaur in its labyrinth, a distant and distorted memory of a magnificent palace and its bull-centric rituals. The work of early 20th century archaeologist Arthur Evans at the Palace of Knossos brought this lost world back to light, but it is modern science that has helped us understand its dramatic end. By analyzing ash layers in ice cores drilled from distant glaciers, researchers can pinpoint the precise timing of the Thera eruption, linking it directly to the Minoan decline. And yet, mysteries remain. Artifacts like the Phaistos disc, a clay tablet stamped on both sides with mysterious symbols in a spiraling pattern, resist all attempts at translation, a final, stubborn puzzle from a culture that mastered so much. The story of the Minoans forces us to confront the raw power of our planet. Here was a people at the peak of their creativity, their society a testament to human innovation, brought low not by war or internal strife, but by the indifferent fury of the earth itself. It is a humbling reminder of the fragile stage upon which our civilizations perform. From the ash-covered ruins of Crete, we journey to a very different landscape, where another society carved its home into the face of a desert cliff and then, just as mysteriously, walked away. Perched high in the sun-baked cliffs of the American Southwest, the silent stone rooms of Mesa Verde stand as a monument to a people who mastered a harsh land and then chose to leave it behind. These are the legacy of the Ancestral Puebloans, a culture once known by the Navajo term Anasazi, which translates to ancient enemies or ancient ones. Their story is not one of a sudden disappearance, but of a profound and deliberate transformation. For centuries, they evolved from nomadic basket weavers into sophisticated builders, creating sprawling complexes like the one at Choco Canyon, a ceremonial and economic hub with great houses aligned to the cycles of the sun and moon. Their pottery was beautifully intricate. Their community structures, known as kivas, were central to spiritual life, and their rock art depicts a deep connection to the world around them. Then, by the end of the 13th century, the cliff dwellings were empty. The question is not what happened to the people, for their descendants are the Pueblo peoples of today, but what compelled them to walk away from such immense effort and architectural genius. The answers are etched into the landscape itself. Scientists studying tree ring data have uncovered a stark truth, a period of intense and prolonged drought that gripped the region for decades. This was not just a few dry years, it was a climatic shift that would have pushed their agricultural practices to the absolute brink. In a land where every drop of water was precious, a generations-long drought would have meant failed crops, dwindling stores of food, and intense competition for scarce resources. Some archaeologists point to signs of social unrest during this period, such as villages built in more defensible positions, suggesting that hardship may have frayed the social fabric. Faced with an environment that could no longer support their concentrated populations, the Ancestral Puebloans made a difficult choice. They did not vanish, they migrated, dispersing across the land and reforming into new communities, adapting their lives and traditions to new circumstances. Their great structures were not tombs, but rather places they respectfully left behind, a testament to their resilience in the face of overwhelming change. Their story challenges our very definition of collapse, suggesting that sometimes the end of a way of life is not a failure, but a strategic retreat and a reinvention. It is a powerful echo from the past, reminding us that adaptation is the ultimate key to survival. This theme of societal transformation under pressure carries us across the ocean to another enigmatic culture, one that thrived in the dense rainforests of Central America. 1,000 years ago, the city of Cahokia was the beating heart of North America. On the fertile floodplains near the confluence of the Mississippi, Missouri, and Illinois rivers, a sprawling metropolis rose, its skyline dominated by enormous earthen mounds. At its center stood the colossal Monk's Mound, a towering structure of packed earth 100 feet high, its base larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. From its flat summit, a powerful leader could gaze upon a city of perhaps 20,000 people, a bustling hub of trade, ceremony, and daily life that rivaled any contemporary settlement in Europe. The air would have been thick with the smoke of cooking fires, the sounds of games played in the central plazas, and the movement of goods arriving from distant lands. This was the pinnacle of the Mississippian culture, a society with a complex social hierarchy and a far-reaching trade network that brought copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf Coast, and mica from the Appalachians. Exquisite artifacts like repoussé copper plates depicting a weeping eye motif and intricately engraved shell cups speak to a rich spiritual and artistic tradition. Yet by the 14th century, this vibrant urban center was quiet. The great plazas were empty, the mounds abandoned to the elements. So what could cause such a powerful and organized society to dwindle away? The answers appear to be woven from multiple threads of environmental and social strain. Archaeologists point to the immense resource demands of such a concentrated population. The constant need for wood for construction and fuel would have led to widespread deforestation of the surrounding bluffs, potentially causing soil erosion that choked local creeks and affected agriculture. Then came the climatic shift known as the Little Ice Age, a period of cooler temperatures that may have shortened growing seasons and disrupted the corn-based economy that sustained the city. This combination of overpopulation, resource depletion, and a changing climate likely placed immense pressure on the social structure. Could the authority of the chiefs residing atop Monk's Mound have been challenged when the harvests failed and resources grew scarce? It is possible that internal conflict or simply a gradual decision to disperse played a role. People may have chosen to leave the crowded city for smaller, more sustainable communities, a strategic adaptation to a changing world rather than a dramatic collapse. The story of Cahokia forces us to reflect on the very nature of urban sustainability. How does a city balance its growth with the capacity of the land that supports it? The silent mounds by the Mississippi stand as a powerful, silent testament to these enduring questions, a reminder that even the grandest human achievements are intimately tied to the environment. And from this lost city of Earth, our journey takes us to a civilization that mastered a far more unforgiving landscape, only to leave behind one of history's most cryptic and challenging messages. The serene stone faces of the Bayon Temple gaze eternally over the jungle, a silent counsel from the height of the Khmer Empire. This was a civilization that mastered water itself, transforming the Cambodian landscape into a fertile powerhouse. At its peak, the empire's capital, Angkor, was the largest pre-industrial city in the world, a sprawling metropolis sustained by a breathtakingly complex network of canals, reservoirs, and barrays, which were massive artificial lakes. These engineering marvels captured the monsoon rains, allowing for multiple rice harvests each year and supporting a population that may have exceeded 1 million people. Under rulers like the great Jayavarman VII, the empire became a beacon of artistic and spiritual expression, its power carved into the very stone of Angkor Wat and the enigmatic faces of the Bayon. Yet, after the 15th century, this magnificent center of power was gradually abandoned, its grand structures slowly reclaimed by the relentless jungle. For centuries, the question lingered: how could such a sophisticated and resilient society simply walk away from its greatest creation? The answers are now emerging from the Earth itself, thanks to revolutionary laser scanning technology known as LiDAR. By peering through the dense forest canopy, LiDAR has revealed the true, staggering scale of Angkor, an urban sprawl of roads, canals, and small villages that extended far beyond the main temple complexes. This discovery of its immense size is also a clue to its vulnerability. Such a vast population placed enormous strain on the environment. The very hydraulic system that gave it life may have ultimately contributed to its decline. Some researchers suggest that centuries of intensive land use led to widespread deforestation and soil erosion. This erosion could have caused the intricate canals to silt up, disrupting the delicate water management that was the empire's lifeblood. At the same time, studies of ancient climate data point to periods of severe monsoon instability, including prolonged droughts followed by intense flooding, events that would have overwhelmed even the Khmer's advanced engineering. A society built on the precise control of water cannot survive when the water itself becomes unpredictable. These environmental pressures were likely compounded by shifting global trade routes, which moved economic power towards coastal ports, and by growing military challenges from neighboring kingdoms like the Siamese. It was probably not one single catastrophe, but a cascade of interconnected stresses, ecological, economic, and political, that slowly unraveled the social contract holding Angkor together. The people did not vanish, they simply migrated, establishing new centers of power and adapting to a changed world. The story of the Khmer Empire is a profound lesson in the delicate balance between human ambition and environmental limits. It shows us that even the most brilliant engineering can be defeated by a changing climate, and the unintended consequences of our own success. This theme of a society reaching its environmental limits echoes far from the Southeast Asian jungles to a remote Pacific island where a different culture faced an even more extreme version of the same dilemma. Deep within the humid jungles of the Mexican Gulf Coast, immense stone heads stare out with silent, stoic authority. These colossal sculptures, some weighing 20 tons, are the most iconic legacy of the Olmecs, Mesoamerica's first great civilization. For centuries, they laid the cultural foundation for all that would follow, from the Maya to the Aztecs, yet their own story ends in a profound and quiet mystery. Their society emerged as early as 1500 BC, centered on powerful city sites like San Lorenzo and La Venta. At San Lorenzo, they transformed a natural plateau into a grand ceremonial landscape, moving mountains of earth to create platforms and plazas. The engineering feat of transporting those gigantic basalt heads from quarries dozens of miles away without the wheel or pack animals speaks to a highly organized and motivated society. They were innovators in every sense, developing a precursor to writing and a complex calendar system that would be refined by later cultures. Their artisans mastered the carving of jade, creating exquisite figurines and ceremonial axes that were traded across great distances. Ritual life was central, with artifacts suggesting practices focused on deities often depicted as part human, part jaguar. Then, around 400 BC, their major centers were systematically abandoned. The great heads at San Lorenzo were intentionally buried, as if laid to rest. What could cause such a foundational culture to recede back into the earth? Archaeologists point to a combination of factors that may have fractured their world. Environmental changes are a leading theory, with evidence suggesting that shifts in river courses crucial for transport and agriculture disrupted their heartland. Some researchers also point to volcanic activity in the region, which could have rendered farmland unusable. Such environmental stress could easily have fueled internal conflicts or challenges to the ruling elite, destabilizing the social order. As one leading archaeologist notes, the Olmecs did not truly vanish. They simply dissolved back into the landscape, their people likely forming the populations of newer, rising cities. Their ideas, however, proved immortal. The Maya would inherit their calendrical concepts and their ball game, while the Zapotecs would build upon their early writing. The Olmec legacy is a powerful reminder that a civilization's end is not always an erasure. The most profound innovations, the seeds of culture, can outlive the very people who planted them, taking root in the future. This journey through the silent cities of the Olmecs now draws us to a different kind of mystery, one found not in a jungle but on the remote, wind-swept plains of another continent. The stoic faces of the Olmecs give way to a city painted in shades of rose and gold. Deep within a narrow desert canyon in modern Jordan, the Nabateans carved their capital, Petra, directly into the living rock. This was no simple outpost, but the dazzling heart of a commercial empire that for centuries controlled the lucrative incense trade, funneling frankincense and myrrh from southern Arabia to the markets of the Mediterranean. To thrive in this arid landscape, they became unparalleled hydrological engineers. They did not just endure the desert, they mastered it. An intricate network of channels, dams, and cisterns captured every precious drop of winter rainfall, diverting flash floods and storing water to sustain a population of thousands and their lush gardens. Walking through the towering, winding canyon that serves as the main entrance, you pass hidden water channels carved into the cliffs, a testament to a society that viewed water as its most valuable currency. The journey culminates in a breathtaking view of the treasury, Petra's most famous facade, its intricate columns and statues glowing in the sun. But this was a city of the dead as much as the living, with countless tombs and temples facades carved high into the cliff faces, a permanent memorial to their wealth and artistry. So what could cause such a resilient and ingenious people to eventually abandon their magnificent capital? The city's decline was a slow fade, not a sudden collapse. A devastating earthquake in 363 CE shattered many of Petra's structures and, more critically, damaged the vital water management system. This was followed by another major quake in 551, delivering a second crippling blow to a city already struggling. At the same time, the world was changing around them. The Roman Empire's annexation of the Nabatean Kingdom in 106 CE had already begun to reroute trade away from the overland caravan routes that were Petra's lifeblood. As maritime trade became more efficient, the demand for their land-based services dwindled. The combination of repeated natural disasters and economic irrelevance proved insurmountable. The Nabateans did not vanish, they gradually dispersed, their knowledge and traditions absorbed into the broader tapestry of the region. Their story forces us to ask a difficult question. How does any society, no matter how advanced or adaptable, survive when the very foundations of its economy are washed away? The silent, rose-red tombs of Petra stand as a powerful monument to the fact that ingenuity can conquer a harsh environment, but it cannot always outrun the shifting currents of commerce and fate. This reflection on economic fragility carries us to a culture that thrived in one of the most isolated places on Earth, only to leave behind a mystery carved in giant, silent statues. Their giant stone faces still gaze across the grassy hills, their backs to the sea as if guarding secrets they will never tell. These are the Moai of Rapa Nui, or Easter Island, and they are the solemn legacy of a people who achieved the incredible in one of the most isolated places on Earth. The Polynesian settlers who reached this remote island created a unique and complex society, one that organized itself into clans and channeled their energy and resources into the creation of these awe-inspiring statues. They carved nearly 1,000 moai from the volcanic rock of the Rano-Raraku quarry, some standing over 30 feet tall and weighing more than 80 tons. The question that has haunted researchers for generations is how and why did a people capable of such feats of engineering and artistry see their society falter? For a long time, the dominant narrative, popularized by thinkers like Jared Diamond, was a stark lesson in ecological collapse. This theory suggests that the islanders, in their fervor to transport and erect these massive statues, completely deforested their island. Without trees to anchor the soil, the land suffered from severe erosion, which crippled agriculture. The loss of trees also meant no more timber for building the seagoing canoes necessary for fishing and trade, cutting off a vital food source. This environmental catastrophe, the theory goes, triggered a brutal period of internal conflict and hardship, a society turning on itself as resources vanished. Yet, more recent archaeological work suggests a more complex and resilient story. Evidence from the Ahu, the massive stone platforms that serve as the moai's foundations, indicates that the statue building did not suddenly stop. Instead, the practice evolved. As conditions grew more challenging, the islanders seemed to have shifted their focus, perhaps placing greater importance on different cultural practices. The discovery of the Rongorongo script, a unique system of glyphs carved on wooden tablets, adds another layer of mystery. No one has yet been able to decipher it, so the Rapa Nui's own account of their history remains locked away. This has led some scholars to argue that the society was adapting, not collapsing, right up until the moment of European contact. The arrival of outsiders in the 18th century brought new and devastating pressures, from unfamiliar diseases to the tragedy of the slave trade, which decimated the population and irrevocably shattered their social structures. So the story of Rapa Nui is not a simple parable about people who foolishly cut down their last tree. It is a far more human story of a culture that displayed remarkable ingenuity and resilience in the face of immense isolation and environmental constraints. Their true legacy is a question that resonates deeply today. How do we balance our grandest ambitions with the real limits of the world that sustains us? The silent Moai offer no easy answers, only a profound reminder that our greatest creations and our survival are forever intertwined. This challenge of thriving within environmental limits connects us to another people who mastered a harsh landscape, the mysterious builders of Great Zimbabwe. The silent Moai of Rapa Nui stand in stark contrast to the vibrant, complex world of the Moche. On the arid north coast of Peru, this powerful civilization erected towering adobe pyramids that rose from the desert like man-made mountains. The Huaca del Sol, a colossal platform mound built from an estimated 140 million sun-dried bricks, served as a political and administrative center, while its neighbor, the Huaca de la Luna, was a sacred space of ritual and ceremony. The Moche were master artisans, creating stunning gold headdresses and ear spools, and their pottery is some of the most expressive in the ancient world. They crafted vessels with remarkable realism, depicting everything from scenes of fishing and healing to portraits of distinct individuals, their faces etched with personality and life. These artifacts are our primary window into their world, for they left behind no written language to tell their own story. Their history is written in clay, metal, and the very earth of their pyramids. Then, around 800 CE, their sophisticated society began to fragment. The great ceremonial centers were abandoned, and the intricate irrigation canals that fed their fields in the desert fell into disrepair. For a long time, the reason for their decline was a mystery, but modern science is now piecing together a dramatic climatic tale. Researchers studying ice cores from the Andes have uncovered evidence of intense climatic chaos. It appears the Moche faced a 1-2 punch of extreme weather events, likely driven by the El Niño Southern Oscillation. First came a brutal period of prolonged drought, lasting for decades, which would have crippled their agricultural base and strained water reserves. Then, this arid period was shattered by a series of catastrophic rains and floods, events that would have devastated the infrastructure they relied on. The archaeological record at sites like the Huaca de la Luna reveals a society under immense stress. Excavations have uncovered evidence of ceremonial practices that may have been responses to these environmental crises. While details are part of a complex cultural context, researchers note that the remains of individuals found in certain settings suggest that, in their search for answers, the Moche may have turned to ultimate appeals to their deities. This points to a highly stratified society where a powerful elite likely orchestrated these rituals in an attempt to reaffirm their authority and intervene with the forces of nature. The story of the Moche is not one of a single catastrophe, but of a society pushed to its breaking point by a volatile climate. It forces us to ask, how does any culture maintain its social order when the fundamental elements of life, water and food, become unpredictable? Their legacy, preserved in exquisite gold and poignant pottery, is a powerful testament to human creativity in the face of overwhelming environmental challenges, and a sobering lesson about the fragility of even the most accomplished societies. In the heart of the world's most forbidding desert, a society of master engineers defied the very sun. The Garamantes of the Libyan Sahara did not just survive in their arid world, they built a powerful kingdom of oasis cities connected by a hidden web of life. Roman historians like Tacitus wrote of them as formidable desert raiders, but archaeology reveals a far more complex picture. They were innovators who constructed a vast underground network of tunnels known as fagaras. These were not simple wells, but gently sloping channels dug deep into the earth, sometimes for miles, to tap into ancient fossil water trapped deep beneath the sand. This incredible hydraulic system allowed them to cultivate crops like dates, grapes, and wheat in the middle of the desert, supporting a population of tens of thousands. Their capital, Garama, was a fortified settlement with multi-story mud brick buildings, and artifacts found there, including fine Roman glassware, speak to their participation in trans-Saharan trade networks that connected the Mediterranean to sub-Saharan Africa. For centuries, they were the undisputed masters of their harsh domain, yet by the 7th century of the Common Era, their civilization was in decline. Their great cities were slowly abandoned, and the fagaras began to fill with sand. What could cause such a resilient society to falter? The very source of their success held the seeds of their challenge. The fossil water they tapped was a finite resource, like a bank account with no new deposits. Centuries of intensive agriculture slowly drained the aquifer, dropping the water table and making the fagaras less effective and increasingly difficult to maintain. At the same time, the world around them was shifting. The rise of new powers and trade routes may have marginalized their role as the primary middlemen of the desert. The combination of environmental strain and economic change created a pressure that their society could not withstand forever. Today, satellite imagery reveals the ghostly outlines of their lost settlements and the faint, straight lines of their buried tunnel networks crisscrossing the desert floor. The story of the Garamantes is a hauntingly relevant lesson in sustainability. It forces us to ask a difficult question about our own world. How do we manage a precious resource when our entire way of life depends on its continuous flow? Their silent, sand-swept ruins stand as a monument to human ingenuity and a quiet warning about the slow, creeping cost of drawing down a legacy that cannot be easily replenished. This reflection on the delicate balance with a life-giving resource carries us to a culture that faced a similar, yet even more extreme, test of its resilience on a remote and windswept island. These finely crafted stone spear points are a signature etched across an entire continent. The Clovis Culture, named for the town in New Mexico where their distinctive fluted points were first identified, represents a wave of humanity that spread across North America with remarkable speed. For a brief but brilliant period around 13,000 years ago, these nomadic hunter-gatherers perfected a technology that made them supremely effective. Their spear points, skillfully chipped with a characteristic groove or flute at the base, were engineered to be securely hafted onto a wooden shaft. This innovation created a weapon that could bring down the era's massive prey, from mammoths to giant bison. Sites like Blackwater Draw in New Mexico provide a snapshot of their world, where the bones of these immense creatures are found alongside the very tools used in the hunt. The Clovis people were the ultimate pioneers, adapting to and thriving in a vast, untamed landscape. Then, within just a few centuries, their cultural signature vanishes from the archaeological record. What could cause such a widespread and successful way of life to fade away? The prevailing theory points to a dramatic shift in the world around them. The end of the last ice age was not a smooth transition. A sudden, sharp return to cold conditions, known as the Younger Dryas event, gripped the planet for over 1,000 years. This would have placed enormous stress on the ecosystems these people relied upon. The very megafauna they hunted, already under pressure from a warming climate, may have found their habitats shrinking and food sources changing too rapidly. Some researchers propose an even more catastrophic trigger, suggesting evidence points to a cosmic event like a comet airburst that could have sparked widespread wildfires and further disrupted the climate. This theory remains hotly debated, but it highlights the scale of the mystery. Did the Clovis people overhunt these great beasts, or were they simply caught in a much larger environmental upheaval that reshaped the continent? The truth is likely a combination, a perfect storm where human hunting pressure met a climate in chaos. The legacy of the Clovis is a profound lesson in adaptability. Their disappearance was not an end but a transformation. The people themselves did not vanish, they evolved, developing new tools and new strategies to survive in a world that had fundamentally changed. Their story forces us to consider the delicate balance between a culture and its environment, and how quickly that balance can be lost. This theme of a people transformed by a changing world carries us across the Atlantic, to the misty shores of a northern archipelago where a different kind of society faced its own environmental limits. Massive stone walls, so thick they were said to be built by giants, encircled the hilltop citadels of the Mycenaeans. This was a society of warriors and traders, the powerful kings who may have launched 1,000 ships against Troy, their deeds later immortalized in the epic poems of Homer. Their palaces at Mycenae and Tiryns were not just homes, but heavily fortified administrative centers, their storerooms filled with treasures, and their walls inscribed with clay tablets in a script we call Linear B. These tablets, once baked hard in the fires that destroyed the palaces, are our first records of the Greek language, meticulous inventories of chariots, weapons, and offerings to the gods. They reveal a highly organized, bureaucratic world, a far cry from the purely mythical heroes of legend. The grandeur of their civilization is still visible today in the massive Lion Gate at Mycenae and the magnificent beehive-shaped treasury of Atreus, a tomb so vast its corbelled dome stood as the tallest and widest in the world for over 1,000 years. Then, around 1200 BC, the lights went out across the entire eastern Mediterranean. The world of the Mycenaeans did not fade, it shattered. Archaeological excavations reveal a stark pattern, a horizon of destruction. One by one, the great palaces were violently burned and abandoned. The intricate bureaucracy that kept the Linear B records vanished, and the art of writing was lost in Greece for centuries. What could cause such a widespread and catastrophic collapse? The evidence points not to a single enemy, but to a perfect storm of calamities. Historians note that this period saw a wave of upheaval, often called the Late Bronze Age collapse, that affected empires from Anatolia to Egypt. The Mycenaean world, it seems, was caught in the same destructive current. Some researchers point to natural disasters, such as a series of major earthquakes that would have devastated their fortified centers and shattered the confidence of the people. Others suggest that internal social unrest, perhaps rebellions against the ruling Wanax or king, fractured these centralized states from within. There is also the long-standing theory of invasions by a mysterious group the Egyptians called the Sea Peoples, a confederation of raiders who disrupted trade and security across the region. Could a mass migration of Dorian Greeks from the north have poured into the resulting power vacuum? The truth is likely a combination of these factors, a cascade of failures where earthquakes weakened defenses, internal conflict bred instability, and outside pressures overwhelmed a system already pushed to its breaking point. The result was a dramatic depopulation and a cultural simplification so profound that we call the following centuries the Greek Dark Ages. The memory of their greatness lived on only in oral poetry, a ghost of a golden age that would one day inspire classical Greece. Their story forces us to ask, how much of our own cultural memory is built upon the silent foundations of worlds we have entirely forgotten? The echoes of this collapse carry us from the fortified citadels of Greece to a very different landscape, where a civilization chose to build its monuments not on hilltops, but deep within the living earth. At an altitude that leaves visitors breathless, the stone city of Tiwanaku stood as a spiritual and political center for a vast Andean realm. Its architects mastered a landscape that would challenge even modern engineers, building with colossal sandstone and andesite blocks cut with such precision that they fit together without mortar. The iconic Gateway of the Sun, a single stone archway carved with a complex deity and rows of winged attendants, hints at a sophisticated cosmology and a deep understanding of astronomy. This was not just a city, it was the heart of a civilization that thrived for centuries around the shores of Lake Titicaca, a society whose influence stretched across the high plains into what is now Peru, Chile, and Bolivia. They were agricultural innovators, creating a system of raised fields known as suca colos. These were not simple garden plots, but a brilliant adaptation to the harsh altiplano climate. By digging canals and mounding the soil into elevated platforms, they created microclimates that protected crops from frost, recycled nutrients from the aquatic plants in the waterways, and conserved water in a region prone to drought. This system was so effective that experimental reconstructions have shown it can produce crop yields far greater than modern techniques in the same area. So what could cause such a resilient and advanced society to recede from its grand capital by 1000 CE? The evidence points to a slow-moving environmental crisis. Paleoclimatologists studying sediment cores from Lake Titicaca itself have found clear proxies of a prolonged and severe drought that gripped the region for decades. In a land where life was already balanced on a knife's edge, this climatic shift would have been catastrophic. The raised fields, so brilliant in normal conditions, rely on a consistent water table. A drought lasting generations would have slowly desiccated the entire system, leading to repeated crop failures. This environmental stress likely fractured the political and religious authority centered at Tiwanaku. The ruling elite, whose power may have been tied to their perceived ability to ensure agricultural abundance, would have seen their influence wane as the land itself failed. It is possible the vast network of outlying communities, no longer receiving the spiritual or economic benefits from the center, simply broke away, leading to a political fragmentation from which the capital could not recover. The civilization did not vanish in a single event, but rather unraveled as its people adapted by dispersing into smaller, more self-sufficient communities. Their legacy, however, was indelible. The architectural styles, agricultural knowledge, and perhaps even religious concepts of Tiwanaku were inherited and refined by the later Weri and ultimately the Inca Empire. The silent, windswept ruins of Tiwanaku force us to ask a difficult question. How does any society maintain its cohesion when the environmental rules that underpinned its success are suddenly and permanently rewritten? This challenge of sustaining a civilization in an extreme environment connects us to another people who flourished where few others could, the mysterious builders of the Moche culture in the heart of West Africa. Their mastery of iron once forged an empire feared by Egypt itself. The Hittites of Anatolia built a powerful kingdom from their rugged highland capital of Hattusa, a city protected by monumental walls and gates adorned with colossal stone lions and sphinxes. This was the center of a state that rivaled the great powers of the late Bronze Age, a society of Indo-European speakers who perfected the art of smelting iron, giving them a significant technological and military edge. Their legacy is preserved not in crumbling stone alone, but in thousands of detailed cuneiform tablets. These clay documents reveal a highly organized civilization with a complex legal code, one that often prescribed restitution and compensation rather than sheer retaliation, showing a nuanced approach to justice. They recorded everything from state treaties like the famous peace agreement with Pharaoh Ramses II after the Battle of Kadesh, to meticulous administrative records and religious texts. Then, around 1200 BC, at the same time the Mycenaean palaces were burning, the Hittite world also crumbled. the great capital of Hattusa was not simply abandoned, it was systematically and deliberately emptied. Archaeological excavations show that the city was set ablaze, but curiously, the royal citadel's granaries and storerooms were left full, and the city's massive gates were left open. This suggests a planned withdrawal, not a sudden, panicked flight. What forces could compel an imperial power to voluntarily torch its own magnificent capital and walk away forever? The Hittites were caught in the same widespread crisis that toppled empires across the eastern Mediterranean. A perfect storm of environmental and social pressures seems to have been the cause. Tree ring data from the region indicates a period of severe, prolonged drought that would have led to catastrophic crop failures and famine, undermining the agricultural surplus that supported the state and its armies. This environmental stress likely triggered massive migrations of displaced peoples, the very groups the Egyptians called the Sea Peoples, whose movements disrupted trade routes and security. Internal strife may have also fractured the kingdom, as outlying provinces broke away from a central authority that could no longer provide protection or food. The Hittite Empire, for all its legal sophistication and military might, could not withstand this cascade of failures. As one leading historian notes, their contributions to law and technology were profound, but even the strongest empires are fragile constructs, dependent on a stable climate and a cohesive social order. The silent lions of Hattusa's gate still stand watch over the empty city, a powerful monument to a stark reality. How quickly can the foundations of power dissolve when the world itself becomes unpredictable? This question of imperial fragility carries us from the Anatolian highlands to the dense, tropical forests of Southeast Asia, where another kingdom built its glory not on iron, but on the vibrant flow of commerce and faith. Long before the pyramids rose in Egypt, enormous towns dotted the fertile plains of Eastern Europe. The Cucuteni-Trypillia culture, a Neolithic society flourishing in what is now Ukraine, Romania, and Moldova, constructed some of the largest settlements on Earth, communities that could house thousands of people in concentric circles of sprawling, communal longhouses. These were not simple villages but vast, planned residential complexes, a breathtaking achievement for a people who had not yet discovered the wheel or metal tools. Their artistry was equally profound, creating exquisite pottery painted with intricate spiral and serpent motifs, symbols that many researchers associate with a worldview centered on feminine divinity and the cycles of nature. Yet their most enduring mystery lies not in how they lived, but in how they repeatedly chose to leave. Archaeological evidence reveals a startling pattern. Every 60 to 80 years, these massive settlements were deliberately set ablaze. The inhabitants would empty a town of all valuables and then burn their entire community to the ground, only to rebuild it anew on the very same spot. This was not an act of panic or invasion, but a seemingly ritual practice, a cycle of creation and destruction woven into the fabric of their culture. Then, around 3500 BC, the cycle stopped. The settlements were burned one final time and never rebuilt. The Cucuteni-Trypillia culture faded from history, leaving behind only their charred foundations and beautiful, enigmatic pottery. What could cause a society of such scale and sophistication to simply cease its ancient rhythms? One leading theory points to the land itself. Such a concentrated population, practicing intensive agriculture for centuries, may have slowly exhausted the soil, leading to falling crop yields that could no longer support their large, centralized communities. Other researchers suggest a shifting climate, with cooler, drier conditions disrupting the farming practices that were their lifeblood. There is no evidence of a violent conquest, pointing instead to a gradual dispersal. The people likely did not vanish, but rather fragmented into smaller, more mobile groups, their culture and knowledge slowly absorbed by neighboring pastoralists. Their deliberate burnings remain one of prehistory's great puzzles. Were these fires a form of ritual purification, a way to spiritually renew their home? Or were they a practical response to pest infestations in the densely packed wooden houses? We may never know for certain. The story of the Cucuteni-Trypillia challenges our very definition of collapse. For them, the end was not a catastrophe, but the final stage of a centuries-long cycle, a deliberate choice to stop rebuilding and to move on, leaving their silent, ashen circles as a testament to one of humanity's first and most ambitious experiments in communal living. This deep prehistoric mystery finds a strange echo millennia later in the sudden silence of a North American people whose own cliffside towns were abandoned under equally puzzling circumstances. While the Hittites forged their empire in iron, another kingdom rose to the south, building its own monuments in the shadow of a giant. The Kingdom of Kush, centered along the fertile Nile in what is now Sudan, was a power to be reckoned with, a civilization that both revered and rivaled ancient Egypt. Far from being a mere copy, the Kushites developed a culture uniquely their own. Their capital shifted over centuries, eventually settling at Meroe, a city that became the heart of a vast trade network. From here, goods like gold, ivory, ebony, and exotic animals flowed north to Egypt and beyond, while Kushite armies marched forth, even conquering and ruling Egypt itself as the 25th dynasty. Their legacy is etched into the desert in the form of over 200 pyramids at Meroe, structures with steeper sides and narrower bases than their Egyptian counterparts, standing as silent sentinels over the sands. They were masters of iron production, their slag heaps at Meroe so vast they led early archaeologists to dub the city the Birmingham of Africa. Most intriguingly, they developed their own writing system, Meroitic script, a beautiful and complex set of symbols that, despite our ability to sound out the words, remains largely undeciphered, keeping the details of their history and literature just out of reach. So what led to the decline of such a formidable state by the 4th century of the Common Era? The answers appear woven from environmental and economic threads. Paleoclimatologists studying the region have found evidence of creeping desertification, a slow but steady drying of the land that would have put immense pressure on agriculture and grazing. At the same time, the world's economic currents were shifting. The rise of new powers, particularly the Kingdom of Aksum to the east in modern-day Ethiopia, began to redirect the lucrative trade routes that had been Kush's lifeblood. Aksum's access to the Red Sea offered a more efficient path for goods, marginalizing the overland routes that passed through Meroe. This economic pressure likely escalated into military conflict with Aksum, further straining the kingdom's resources. The magnificent Temple of Ammon at Nokka, with its grand entrance and hybrid architectural styles, stands as a testament to their cultural synthesis and wealth, even as the empire that built it was facing these mounting challenges. The story of Kush forces us to reflect on a profound question of cultural exchange. How does a society maintain its distinct identity while standing next to a cultural colossus? And what happens when the economic foundations of that identity are swept away by the tides of global change? The silent pyramids of Meroe hold that question in their sun-baked stones, a prelude to another civilization that would face the ultimate test of isolation. Their world was one of ice and absolute silence, broken only by the wind and the crack of a harpoon striking its target. For nearly 2,000 years, the Dorset culture thrived along the vast, frozen rim of the Arctic from Greenland to northern Canada. These were the Tuniat, the ancient ones of Inuit oral tradition, a Paleo-Eskimo society of profound resilience. They did not build great cities of stone, but their ingenuity was perfectly suited to their environment. Their homes were snow houses and shelters built from what the land provided, and their survival depended on a deep, intimate knowledge of the sea ice and the animals that lived upon it. They crafted unique and elegant tools from bone, ivory, and stone, including the iconic Dorset parallel-sided harpoon head, a design that was uniquely their own and essential for hunting seals at their breathing holes. But it is their art that speaks most eloquently across the centuries. They carved miniature, hauntingly beautiful figures from walrus tusk and driftwood, depicting polar bears, seals, and human faces, often with a mysterious, serene expression. Many of these carvings show a spiritual connection to the natural world, with transformation figures that blend human and animal features, suggesting a rich shamanistic tradition. Then, around 500 years ago, their subtle presence faded from the archaeological record. The Dorset people who had endured for millennia were gone. What could have happened to a people so perfectly adapted to one of the harshest climates on Earth? The leading theories point to a changing world that finally outpaced their ancient ways. A period of climate warming, often called the medieval warm period, began to reshape their Arctic home. This warming would have altered the patterns of the sea ice, the very platform upon which Dorset life was built. The seals and walruses they relied on would have shifted their migration routes or become less abundant, creating a precarious food supply. Into this changing landscape came a new people, the ancestors of the modern Inuit, known to archaeologists as the Thule culture. The Thule possessed technological advantages, including larger, open-skin boats for whaling and more powerful dog sleds, which may have allowed them to exploit a wider range of resources and outcompete the Dorset for prime hunting grounds. There is little evidence of direct, widespread conflict, but the arrival of a more populous and technologically versatile society, combined with environmental stress, may have been an insurmountable challenge. The Dorset, a people who had honed a specific and successful way of life for centuries, may have found their world shrinking until it could no longer support them. Their story is a poignant lesson in the limits of specialization. How does a culture, supremely adapted to a specific set of conditions, cope when those conditions change forever? The delicate carvings and silent, empty house rings they left behind are a powerful testament to human endurance, and a quiet warning about the fragility of even the most resilient ways of life in the face of a shifting world. This reflection on a society transformed by a warming climate carries us to a very different landscape, where another civilization faced its own ecological turning point. Golden light still glimmers from the crowns found in the ancient tomb mounds of Gyeongju, a final echo of the Silla Kingdom's brilliance. This was the first state to unify the Korean peninsula, a dynasty that lasted for nearly a millennium and fostered a cultural golden age under the peaceful banner of Buddhism. Their capital was a city of splendid temples and royal palaces where art and science flourished. The Cheomseongdi Observatory, a graceful stone bottle-shaped structure that still stands today, is one of the oldest surviving astronomical observatories in the world, a testament to their quest to understand the heavens. The kingdom was also protected by a unique elite, the Hwarang or Flowering Knights. These were not merely warriors, but young aristocrats trained in martial arts, poetry, music, and spiritual discipline, guided by a secular ethical code to serve the state with loyalty and honor. Their philosophy wove together Confucian values, Buddhist teachings, and a deep love for the natural beauty of their land. Yet, after the 10th century, this long-enduring unified state began to crumble. The very aristocracy that had supported the throne, including powerful regional warlords, began to challenge the central government's authority. This internal strife fragmented the political landscape, creating a power vacuum. As one Korean historian notes, the strength of a unified state can become its greatest weakness when the bonds of loyalty among the ruling class begin to fray. Compounding this, the economic system that supported the lavish court and the aristocracy began to strain under the weight of its own structure. The concentration of land and wealth in the hands of a few created hardship for the common people and reduced the tax base, weakening the kingdom from within. The result was not a sudden invasion, but a slow dissolution. The unified Silla Kingdom fractured, giving way to the tumultuous later Three Kingdoms period before eventually being supplanted by the Goryeo dynasty. Their story forces us to consider a profound cycle in history. How does a culture that achieves the monumental feat of unification, creating a shared identity and a lasting legacy, eventually lose its cohesive force? The golden crowns in their burial mounds are not just symbols of wealth, but of a complex and layered society whose internal divisions ultimately led to its transformation. And this pattern of a powerful state giving way to a new era leads us to our penultimate mystery, a civilization whose own collapse was so total it became the very definition of a vanished world. The delicate curve of a ceramic bowl holds an entire world in miniature. Here, painted in stark black on a white background, a rabbit leaps, a hunter draws his bow, and mythic figures dance in a silent, eternal story. This is the legacy of the Mimbres people, a vibrant branch of the Mogollon culture that flourished for centuries in what is now southwestern New Mexico. Their artistry was extraordinary, transforming everyday pottery into a canvas for their universe. They depicted everything from the tangible, like insects and fish, to scenes from a rich spiritual life, including figures that appear to be part human and part animal, perhaps representing powerful beings from their cosmology. These were not random decorations, but a complex visual language, a way of encoding their beliefs and daily experiences into objects of profound beauty. Their communities were centered in pit houses, homes dug partly into the earth for insulation, and they built ceremonial structures known as kivas, indicating a deeply communal and ritualistic society. Then, around 1150 of the Common Era, the pottery stopped. The villages were gradually abandoned, and the artistic tradition that defined them for generations came to a sudden end. What could silence such a distinct and expressive voice? The archaeological and climatic data point to a familiar, yet no less devastating, challenge. Tree ring records from the region reveal a period of intense and prolonged drought, a dry spell so severe it would have pushed the limits of survival in an already arid landscape. Farming in the Mimbres Valley became a desperate gamble, with crops failing and the river that sustained them running dangerously low. This environmental crisis likely triggered profound social changes. The very structure of their society, which had been growing more complex and possibly more hierarchical, may have fractured under the strain. Some researchers suggest that the concentration of population into larger villages became unsustainable, leading to resource disputes and a breakdown of the social order that supported their artistic traditions. Yet, the story of the Mimbres is not one of a people vanishing into thin air. The evidence strongly suggests a migration, a deliberate dispersal to join other Pueblo groups to the north and west. Their unique artistic style may have ended, but their people and their cultural knowledge likely lived on, woven into the fabric of their descendants. This forces us to reflect on a powerful idea. When a culture changes so profoundly that its most visible expressions disappear, does the civilization end, or does it simply transform? The silent, painted bowls of the Mimbres offer no easy answers, only a poignant reminder that cultural identity is both fragile and resilient, capable of being reborn in new forms even when its oldest vessels are left behind. Their world was sealed in sand, a final breath preserved for millennia under the desert sun. In the stark emptiness of the Tarim Basin, the Taklamakan Desert guards one of history's most startling secrets. Here, archaeologists uncovered mummies with strikingly European features, their fair hair and colorful woven textiles perfectly intact, as if they had only just closed their eyes. These are the Tocharians, a people who spoke a language belonging to the Indo-European family, a tongue as distant from Chinese as English is from Hindi. They built thriving oasis cities along the shifting edges of the desert, way stations on the early Silk Road where goods and ideas flowed between East and West. Their legacy survives in ancient manuscripts, Buddhist texts, and commercial records that detail the lives of a sophisticated, mercantile society. Yet by the first millennium of the Common Era, their distinct cultural footprint began to fade from the archaeological record. The question is not one of a sudden disappearance, but of a gradual absorption. What could cause such a vibrant and unique people to slowly blend into the tapestry of history? The answers lie in the dual pressures of a changing environment and the currents of human migration. The Taklamakan is one of the most dynamic deserts on Earth, and relentless desertification would have slowly choked their agricultural lands, making their oasis homes increasingly difficult to sustain. At the same time, the rise of the Silk Road as a major thoroughfare brought new peoples and powerful empires into the region. The movement of Turkic groups from the north and east, along with the expanding influence of Han China, created a melting pot where Tocharian identity was gradually diluted through intermarriage and cultural exchange. Modern DNA studies have been pivotal in tracing their journey, confirming that these individuals were not mere travelers, but the founders of a long-established population that had migrated from the steppes thousands of years earlier. Their genetic legacy, however, was slowly woven into the broader population of Central Asia. As one researcher notes, their story is less about a vanishing act and more about a profound cultural and genetic assimilation. They did not die out, they merged. Their individual identity was lost, but their influence persisted in the languages, technologies, and artistic styles that traveled the trade routes they helped pioneer. This final story brings our journey through 20 forgotten worlds to a poignant close. Each of these civilizations, from the Indus Valley to the Tarim Basin, faced its own unique constellation of challenges, a convergence of environmental shifts, economic pressures, and social transformations. Their stories are not simply tales of failure, but profound lessons in human resilience and adaptation. They teach us that the end of a civilization is rarely an end for its people, who so often disperse, migrate, and carry their knowledge into new futures. These silent cities and empty plazas compel us to look at our own interconnected world and ask the most fundamental questions. What defines a civilization's success? Is it the longevity of its monuments or the resilience of its people to change and evolve? The greatest lesson these lost worlds can teach us is that our own society is not a permanent edifice, but a living, changing entity, forever in dialogue with the environment and with itself. The echoes of their choices, their innovations, and their quiet departures are a haunting, essential reminder of our shared human journey. These silent echoes from 20 lost worlds weave a profound tapestry of human experience. Each story, from the sophisticated grids of the Indus Valley to the European faces preserved in the Tarim Basin, speaks to a universal truth about ingenuity, adaptation, and our shared vulnerability. These civilizations achieved breathtaking marvels, mastering their environments and building cultures of immense complexity, yet they all eventually faced forces beyond their control. Their quiet departures remind us that no society, no matter how powerful or advanced, is immune to the slow pressures of a changing climate. the exhaustion of precious resources, or the unpredictable shifts in the social fabric. The great lesson here is not one of inevitable failure, but of profound resilience. It is a lesson in the delicate balance required for long-term survival, emphasizing the critical importance of sustainable practices, the preservation of cultural memory, and the human capacity to adapt in the face of overwhelming change. For our own modern, interconnected global community, now confronting its own environmental and social challenges, these ancient mysteries offer urgent and invaluable insights. They are not just footnotes in a history book, they are cautionary tales and inspiring testaments to the human spirit. We hope this journey inspires you to look closer at the world beneath your feet, to visit a local museum with a new perspective, or to lose yourself in a book about archaeological discovery. We would love to hear which of these vanished civilizations captured your imagination the most, so please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on this voyage through the deepest corridors of time. If you enjoyed uncovering these secrets, subscribe for more deep dives into the puzzles of our past. Carry forward the wisdom of those who came before, for their indelible marks upon our world are a legacy meant to be remembered.